Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good to be with you today, and thanks a lot for joining us. We're lucky enough today to be joined by Andy Boutle, who's the head of digital construction at ALEC, and he's speaking to us today from the UAE. So thanks a lot to Andy for taking the time today. For those of you who don't know Andy, I think his reputation precedes him, but Andy has had a history working here in BIM and as the head of BIM there, and he's a really active contributor to the UK BIM Alliance and the UK BIM Frameworks guidance. So we're really lucky to have him with us today to share his experience. So thanks again, Andy. I just to set the scene a little bit, my name is Mo. I'm one of the co-founders of Morta. We started a few years ago, and really our focus is on helping organizations move out of spreadsheets and documents and into databases. This is our first webinar. Again, we're really lucky to have Andy kicking this off. The objective really with these webinars is going to be for our users and our people really who are pushing the industry forward and moving to databases to share their experiences, the benefits that they've seen in this move, the challenges that they've seen, and some of the tips and lessons effectively and best practices that they have to share with everyone. So again, thanks a lot, Andy, for joining us, and really looking forward to hearing from you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Mo, and really good to be invited, and looking forward to sharing some stuff that we're doing using Morta at the moment. If that's useful for everyone, that'd be really good. And then have a bit of a discussion Q&A at the end. Yeah, should be useful. Do you want me to start then, Mo? Shall I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. I think we have a good number of people already in, so we can get started.
Cool. And it's not too much later here. We're only 3 hours ahead. So your 3 p.m. is my 6 p.m. So you're in the way of my dinner, but that's fine. Right, let me share screen and get up. I've just got a couple of slides just to set the scene a bit before I dive into, it's not really, I guess it's a live demo. I'll click through Morta and just show you some of the things we've been doing. So yeah, so I mean, I've wanted to move to seeing some of the great stuff that Rob Jackson's done in the UK over the last couple of years, building a, for want of a better word, information hub, or information management hub, to really generate and manage resources, documentation essentially, in a database. You know, it's obviously, for me, it's the way to go. I'd wanted to do it at Kier, quite honestly, when we were going for the kite mark and building our template resources, but the timing didn't feel quite right, and I didn't want to create another sort of cottage industry in the BIM department that the other departments didn't interact with. So it didn't feel right. Then joining ALEC just over 6 months ago, one of the first things we wanted to do was to go for the BIM kite mark with BSI. So of course we needed to, I mean, experienced team already there, you know, delivering projects, some really experienced BIM specialists. You know, the templates weren't really properly organized centrally. You know, it's from big project to big project. They take the last BIM execution plan or what have you and start to tweak it and edit it, and other resources. So it's an opportunity really to have a start in a new approach. So I just want to throw this up to try and articulate the challenge, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. So managing Word and Excel resources, documentation, and don't get me wrong, I'm a lover of Excel. It's a fantastic tool, and it's always going to be a use case for it. But when you're trying to manage certainly IM resources, it can be quite challenging. And I've borrowed some headings there in the red text from a post that Morta did the other day, actually, that is bang on. So for me, so yeah, so the challenge is we have scattered Excel spreadsheets. They're not dynamic particularly, and they're often shared via email, if not via the appropriate system, whether that's a CDE solution, EDMS, SharePoint, you know, whatever it is. Things are getting edited, emailed, completed, sent round. So it's really tricky. manual data entry, and then often double handling inputs, triple, quadruple handling in many cases into, you know, tables embedded with documents. And many of you on the call, you know, think of a Word generated BIM execution plan and all the different little tables you have, like, you know, recording this party does this, they're the architect, this is their originator code, etc., etc. You know, you're having to type it in 3, 4, 5 times probably in different tables in different locations. Breakable Excel spreadsheets, great as they are, you know, as soon as you try and get multiple different people or parties to input, to maybe whether it's a template with some formatting, some pick lists, some rules in there, some macros, and then try and aggregate those back, things break, especially if people start to play about with some of the formatting. Certainly, I'm sure many of you, like I did back at Kier, you know, we had an Excel workflow for information delivery plans. So we'd send out TIDP templates to our supply chain with the logic in, with the pick list, get those back, drop them in a folder, and then that would then via a Power Query command return it into a master read-only MIDP. You know, great when it works, but God, did that break over and over again. Someone has to keep going back in and fixing things. And then disconnected. So, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, there's some form of spreadsheet, progress tracker, trying to track progress, and often that's referencing information that's held in existing systems, again, CD, solution, metadata, whatever it is, that someone's clicking in going, oh yeah, they've uploaded that, and it's in this format, we've checked this, and again, it's manual cross-checking. So that's kind of the challenge for me. And again, they're not just related to BIM or information management, but actually, you know, any function, discipline in our industry, we've got the same challenges, really, haven't we? Trying to manage these disparate documentation. So the opportunity, like I was saying, when joining ALEC, we knew we wanted to go for the kite mark. We had some really good documentation templates, but do we continue using Word and Excel, or do we actually move to a database approach? And it's important to get buy-in from my team to this. So we got a quick proof of concept, free demo of Morta. Had a bit of a play with it. Set Morta a couple of challenges. You know, could you build this workflow or this document? We started with questionnaires, actually capability questionnaires. Can we build this in a database? Can it send out an email to the supplier? Can they fill it in? Which was a good use case that proved. So, you know, the team were instantly behind it. So we started to move on it. And of course, Morta was our chosen solution for that execution plan. And again, we're taking PDF exports of that. That's going on ACONX, getting client approval, etc., and managing things accordingly there. So then the next one I just wanted to show you some bits of, which is kind of on the topic of the presentation, is you know, ISO 19652. So us as a lead appointed party in ALEC, main contractor. So yeah, building our template resources for that project. So I'll just flick onto that one in Morta. So if I go back to here, ALEC Information Hub, Information Management Hub. So I'll start just by, I guess, just quickly going through this introduction. So this is like the home page. So this contains all of our lead appointed party resource templates. So the process for how we're going to manage this, deploying this onto projects. So first, when we've got an incoming tender that's got requirements, the first thing we'll do is create a new project in Morta for the tender. We'll then duplicate the template resources from tender response. Up here, everything under here will get duplicated across to that project instance, that tender instance, and then we'll start developing the pre-appointment BIM execution plan, mobilization plan, etc. in Morta, and then that will then feed into the tender response. If we're successful and the project's awarded, we'd then move the pre-appointment BIM execution plan onto O2 appointment and rename it from being pre-appointment, so appointment here. And this menu, those of you who are familiar with ISO 9650, follows the sub-phases, I guess, for information management in the delivery phase. So tender response, appointment, mobilization, etc., right through to project closeout. These are the ones relevant for a lead appointed party. There's obviously ones upstream of this for the client, but these are the core ones that we interact with. So we'll then duplicate all the other resources under O2 appointment, and then anything downstream to that project instance. And then whoever the BIM or digital construction managers we've rebranded to, try not to use BIM as much as we can. They'll then manage that and develop the resources from that point onwards. So that's a quick introduction to it. Just to talk about this site, because you'll see there's varying ways the side menu structure. This is completely customizable how you want it. Now, you can do this by each table process you create carries a type. You can enter the type, and that will determine effectively the menu heading it sits under, or the grouping it sits under here. The cleanest way to manage it, under here I've got menus and Morta tags. So I've got a menu headings table. And it's got a particular column type here. If I go here, it's called a variable, Morta variable column type. As long as that column type is set to that, whatever I type in the rows here will be available and build this menu in the side, so you can completely customize it however you want and fit resources under whichever heading. So that's how that's controlled. If I added one there, then I'd get another option to put resources under the whatever I add. But I'm going to first show you tender response. So let's go to that section. So we get an incoming tender. What's the first thing we do? So of course, as part of the kite mark work, you have to develop obviously your internal process maps. You can't see that particularly well here. I've got a link here because the source file sits on our intranet page without it's central. You can see it a bit better here. So anyone coming into what are the things we have to do from an information management perspective in terms of a tender response? So we've got the start process, we've got the incoming documentation that we should see from the client's invitation to tender pack. We need to first nominate individuals to undertake the information management function. We then establish the pre-appointment BIM execution plan. We need to do some capability and capacity assessments, do a summary, establish a mobilization plan, record any information risks, and that all feeds into the tender response and then into what we send back to the client. So that's all there. That gives you the crib sheet of who does what. I'll quickly touch on the information management function assignment matrix. It's one close to my heart. It's developing the template and the guidance, UK BIM framework guidance. But again, lovely to manage this in a database. So I've just grouped this up to the essential, the headings. So of course we can still see what the client should have done upstream by expanding these, but the first part we come in is the tender response. And here's the core things that we need to do that align the same as what you just saw in the process map. Establish the pre-appointment execution plan, etc., etc., etc. And then we can go and look at who's typically responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, or it's not applicable to. I've got a column there just to suggest the organisation accountability, but then we can go and again via pick list say, well, actually on this project, the design manager from the design department is going to be responsible for this, but this gives a good starting point of who should be doing what. And that we can continue to expand these through the various phases on the left, appointment, mobilisation, etc. as we go down. And again, you can filter all of this, of course. So if we just want a view, and I think I've got. I need to go into the main table to do my previews, but I can filter on this and say, let's go by, show me everything. What's the commercial? I've got it as departments here. You can change it to commercial lead, whoever it is one of the values. So show me everything that the commercial team are responsible and accountable for. And there's only one thing that they're really responsible, accountable for in this part of the process, and that's complete the appointment documentation, including the various resources we're producing. So there you go. Gives a good example there, hopefully. Just take that filter off. Okay, so that's the function assignment matrix, pre-appointment BIM execution plan. Again, we decided, we're aligning to the ISO, we may as well, why don't we, organize our section headings as per the ISO suggests, and then fit the content relevant under each section heading. I'll just expand all here, do a very quick pass. The other actually nice thing, if I just collapse that a second. So we're under a stage of period. We've built all of our templates to a first pass, but this is by no means finished, and the team are peer reviewing and we're capturing comments and suggestions. So you can see over here, you've got a nice way. We've got one comment against this section, and it's me commenting on my own resource, which is good, isn't it? I built this with a colleague, so it's not strictly true, but you can start to register. Whoever's got the permissions can come in and suggest comments on different sections. What would be nice, Morta, is to have that same functionality on subsections, just to note that one when we expand things, but I think that's already in the pipeline. So yeah, we've tried to align to the ISO as much as possible. I guess the bit I just want to focus on from the pre-appointment bit is, and this is an interesting one. I'll probably get, I know Mr. Stewart's on the call and a few others. This bucks probably what the ISO suggests as a high-level responsibility matrix, but for the information requirements we receive, this kind of works. I think we may develop this ahead, but in every project we get from the client, BIM uses, and that's just a repeatable thing. So we kind of saw the high-level responsibility matrix of, we can group where the client's saying you need to do 4D, you need to do 5D, you need to do progress tracking, etc. This starts to reflect that. We can start to enter in the source clause section of the ER where that information exists, a bit of a description, the software we might use to deliver it, or suggest to deliver, who are the responsible parties. Again, there's a pick list there from another table, and then some responsibilities, some commentary, I guess, of the various responsibilities by any subcontractors. Probably it's definitely not what the intention of the high-level responsibility matrix is, but that kind of works at the moment, so that's there. Now, the reason I've focused on that is that then dynamically joins to another table in our ALEC EIRs, or lead appointed party ERs, so just to note that one. I'm going to come out of the BIM execution plan now, conscious of time. So we have developed a mobilisation plan, and personally I keep these quite succinct as possible, but I think it's quite nice to separate it out from BIM execution plan itself. So if I just expand all sections, we've got a version control table just because of exporting and having to upload static PDF outputs to the CD, of course. So that just tracks that, when we've done an output, the revision status, etc. So I've just lumped this into a few sections. So introduction, mobilising resources. So, we plan to deliver some education for the delivery team. What's that? What are the topics as a start for 10? The information management process according to ISO 19650. It's going to be delivered by our BIM lead or digital construction manager, delivered to task team specialists and any delivery team members as required, and a bit of a description of what we'll be doing. And also any key information on information exchanges that task team BIM specialists need. Just again, keeping it quite a light touch, not too detailed. Training for the delivery team, so we know the certain softwares we're proposing for use or the clients asked us to use, forcing us to use. So they're the various topics, those are the systems, who's going to be delivering the training, who's it going to be to, etc., to give the client assurance that we're equipping for mobilisation, I guess. Mobilising information technology. There's just some statements in there. Configuring, testing the CD. Again, some potential statements of how we'd go about that. Testing information exchanges, information production methods and procedures, and then developing shared resources. So it's quite a succinct document, but at least it sets out how we potentially are going to mobilise. And again, the key thing we've got going via PowerPoint, believe it or not, linked to a Power BI dashboard currently that's really good actually, is an actual mobilisation tracker. So we can record when we onboard subbies, when we're giving them training, when they're doing this, that and the other, they've got access to systems. So that's going to be a natural thing to build in Morta a bit later on to then track against the plan. Okay, I'm going to rattle through this. The next one I just want to go, so we'll come out of the tender response, appointment phase. Again, we've got another process map, a little bit more intricate there, that tracks, so different departments are now input into the IM process as they should be. We've got commercial planning, design, it just shows the process, who does what, the inputs and outputs. I'm not going to labour on that. So I will start with So exchange information requirements, lead appointed party. So again, this one's is a bit of a head scratcher when you're used to just producing a BIM execution plan, and that almost articulates the information requirements to a point as well as the client CIR. I personally see the value of splitting this out, because you may have appointment specific requirements that it may be one size fits all, or you may have some specific requirements for different packages or different appointments. So this does allow you to then really filter down and cascade the pertinent information requirements to your different appointed parties. I don't think this is particularly the finished article by any stretch, and I think it could do with some improvements, but this is where I've arrived at to start with. So a bit of an introduction, schedule of information requirements. Now, this then summarizes the client's exchange of information requirements, and of course, we make that available to our supply chain, but they probably don't want to comb through all of it. So this is the table here that it just bizarrely, and this wasn't planned, it just seemed to make sense when I was doing this, that this links back to that high level responsibility matrix for the uses. So there is a table join in here. If I go to the source table, you see these columns here. Yeah, let me come out of this and quickly go into edit mode. Go to the source table. Yeah, so edit column. So you can see there's a table join here that references the BEP high level responsibility matrix, BIM model uses to be delivered. So this allows us to select whichever one. So 4D sequencing, it may be appropriate to we may be sequencing structures and I don't know, facade, concrete, whatever it is, but it may not be applicable to MEP. So this is where you may start to tailor things depending on the appointment, but then as long as I select that, it will bring through the reference, that the same value from the different columns from that high level responsibility matrix for this column and this column. So you're not then regurgitating and retyping double entry, etc. It's dynamic and it responds to what you do upstream. But then of course you can then have manual columns there where you can add details as you see fit. So that's how we do that one, and that seems to work relatively well as a concept, to be developed further. Of course, things never stay still. Mo, just interrupt me if I'm running out of time. I haven't got too much left to cover actually, but do let me know. The last bit I wanted to show on here was IDP again, just really quickly, but I've approached this slightly differently on this one to the project example where we tested it. So what I've done on this one is actually see all the tables under here. So I've kept all the tables relevant to the sub phase it's relevant to, the process it's relevant to, or processes, documents. If you come down here, you can see here, I've got a separate table for each field of the naming convention, essentially. And this one's obviously aligned to well, it's not obviously, but it's aligned to the UK National Annex update, because actually, despite being in the UAE, many clients still reference the UK annexes and specifics, which is quite nice to hear when you come out from the UK. So I've got a table for each field of the naming convention, so functional breakdown, spatial breakdown, form code. So there's all the standard codes that are in the National Annex, with some guidance about what each one is. Again, there's a little mini concatenation there to take the code and the description, and then when you select it in the pick list from TIDPs, it'll only take the code, so the user can see that it's D equals drawing, but when it concatenates the file name or the ID, it'll only take what's left of the hyphen, so it only delivers the code. So you can build those kind of rules. The reason why haven't got one table here for all my codes like I showed you on the previous project is because you can start to use these tables for other sources as well. So you may want to build, originator codes. This is a nice one to build your database of who's who on the project. So you may have companies, you may have contact detail columns, but you're only referencing this column into the MIDP pick list. So it's probably best practice to manage tables, break your tables down, and then you can reference them and create all sorts of relationships and formulas and repeat information without entering it more than once. So just popping back up to the IDP. So we've got a starter for 10. So there's one for us as ALEC, and there's the TIDP. And let me just go and enter a row into here just to show you how that works as a user entering it. There's an examples here. So I'll just go and add a new row. test, I don't know. So that's my manual title. So you can see there's the formula, and there's no values I picked. So there's none, 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 no. And as I come over, and again, you can copy these. So let's do a control V. I'll just pull these columns out, apologies. And then I can go and select my pick list. Obviously, I've only got the standard ones in there to start with. You build out your tables as you go. It's relevant to first floor. It's a model. It's civil engineering, and my number code 0001, etc., etc. I can put a scale in. I can try say it's going to be an NWD, for example, what have you. I'm the information author. You can put in dates of when you're going to plan to issue it. There we go. So it's a date column, that one. The other nice thing we could do is build connections. So of course you want to connect your plan to the actual delivered. So for us, AConnect or BIM 360 are the culprits that are mostly used. So we can API Morta into those to go and scrape the data, get the references, get the metadata, and deliver it back into the table as a bit of a tracking exercise to see your plan versus actual and your gaps. And is there information on the CD that wasn't even on a delivery plan? So you can start to manage all of that good stuff. So that's how that works. And there's the concatenation. It's built the file name from my pick list, and I'm all good. I've got no warnings. I've got no duplicates at the moment. Morta is happy with me. Okay, I'm going to pop back to my PowerPoint. So the last thing, and I won't show you these, but the next step for us now, we've built those templates. They seem to work. The guys are happy with them. We're deploying them on projects. The next thing is to connect to systems, like I said. So we do have a project, and I'm not going to show you this, but we've already done that API with Morta into BIM 360. The nice story here is my guy on the project, after working with Myrna to connect all of this for last year or so. It's a huge project. And he had an Excel model tracker just purely for managing and tracking models when they're uploaded, have they had the quality check, etc., etc. We've got over 500 individual model files in this project. So it's this almighty Excel tracker. Every week you'd go into BIM 360, look if the latest version's been uploaded, have they uploaded the multiple formats they should have done, etc., etc., and go and key into this Excel tracker to record it. That Excel tracker, quite smartly, fed a Power BI dashboard, and that's how we report progress to the client. So we've built the same in Morta, but not only that, we've connected it so it automatically every week it goes and does the scrape from the metadata from BIM 360, delivers it back into the table, and automatically updates. So just that activity alone is saving, he thinks, 5 person hours, I won't say man hours, person hours a week. So when you start to add that up, and that's only one use case on one project that can be replicated, that's the ROI. You start to think, wow, if we scale this, and not just in our department but across departments, the ROI could be considerable. So that's a success story. We've also working with our design department, so we've got a good IRS that was an Excel IRS that one of our design manager ladies was managing. That's been built in Morta. She's just getting her head around that to see if she can deploy it. That's an example there of an iframe. So I've got of managing a bit of a strategy for this, where you set annual goals. That has all the KPIs that feed that in this project, as well as I've got a live, it's called an iframe, so I've got a live view that's interactive into our intranet page where I can interact with the same that's going there. And yeah, the intention is to keep scaling it, because I think it can add value to all disciplines, that kind of approach. Right, I've talked enough. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful. I'll go back to Mo perhaps and take any questions.
Yeah, no, Andy, thanks a lot for taking us through all of that. And in all honesty, I'm really impressed by your command of the platform.
It's taken a while. I mean, this is the one. I'm so distant from the sharp end now, and the proper tools. The project delivery tools, model viewing, Kobe, all of that. It's nice to actually give a bit of focus back on a tool that I can master. So.
Yeah,
the one thing I'm close to.
You've clearly definitely mastered it. And there was once a person I was demoing in a presentation, and he said that I was a brave man for having a 10-minute live demo. So you just went through a live demo for 30 minutes or so, and honestly, thanks a lot for taking us through that. We've had a lot of really good questions come out so far. I think one of the biggest ones that we've had, and I realize you touched on it towards the end, but are you thinking of linking effectively the database to other databases like EDMSs, for example? And some people have also asked about whether you've thought about integrating with your project schedule for planning purposes. So what have you seen when it comes to integrations, and how have you found that so far?
Yeah, so absolutely on the connecting to CDE, like I said, we've got that BIM 360 connection, and we're currently working with you guys to connect to AConnect, because we always have these two systems side by side for published information. It all goes on AConnect. That's the audit trail, the version of the truth, and then working shared information, typically models, is always been 360 over here. So we're connecting to both. Absolutely, and there's other systems we can connect to. It's just an open as long as there's an open API, then we'll potentially have a go at it if we can see some value. What was the other part of the question, Mo? Sorry.
Are you thinking of linking to planning
schedule
systems for that?
Yeah.
I think it's specifically for information delivery planning, where we're running into different ways of planning. So I think some people are starting to think of connecting it to schedule.
Yeah, I mean, that again, yeah, absolutely. And I'm completely, there should be some form of connection there, one informing the other. Haven't got around to that, having that conversation yet, but that's probably on the hit list of things to do at some point, for sure. Yeah, whether we can connect or export from P6 into Morta to help, build some of those dates and the dependencies. Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the other, I think, interesting questions that we were asked was, do the appointing parties have access to the same functionality as ALEC? How have you managed that? What are the rights that you've given to the client themselves?
So the client, the client supply chain is many to come in and interact. So yeah, we've got on that project I showed you, we've got the client side team. They've got access. We give them a bit of a training. Why do you want to try and, if you want to review the MIDP that we've uploaded this version to AConnect, you can filter it and in Excel, but why don't you interact in Morta? And here's how to do it. So yeah, view only access at the moment, but they can comment in there should they want to. But the ideal scenario is the information requirements are built in Morta or another system similar. And actually, we may have the scenario where we may have Planoly client side, where clients using Planoly, and we may be using Morta delivery team side. And again, wouldn't a nice opportunity be to potentially connect the two where it may work, where it may be appropriate, so we can help automate some of it. That was a conversation I was going to have with you next, Mo, or down the road a bit. But
Definitely one for us to have. In relation to what's interesting, especially when it comes to planning, to be honest, is we're seeing different approaches come about. So I just saw, for example, Ralph put down a message saying, have we looked at document sets or grouping effectively packaging documents in a certain way for planning purposes?
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of different, what I'm seeing is that different organizations are approaching it differently, and it's like really driven by how internal, like effectively planning is happening. One of the other questions that came about, I think we've touched on permissions in multiple ways. One of the questions that they've asked is how administratively heavy is effectively like permissioning? Are you finding it really time consuming effectively to set up
No, not now. I mean, I have to admit there was a steep learning curve it did take a while, honestly, to get my head around how best how permissions worked in Morta, because you can go very granular as you need to. So it's just understanding that. So we use Morta tags for permissions, and that basically allows you to group users into specific permission sets. And then typically, rather than you never want to be adding individual users where you can help it to different permissions. So you have people in tagged effectively, much like EDMS's work, and then you just apply the permissions accordingly that way. So using the tags, it can be quite easy and dynamic. Just once you've got your head around how the view of the table needs to be, the permissions need to be set, and the process. And so yeah, once you get in the rhythm, it's not too administratively burdening. It's not the right way to say, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think to be honest, I think what you're saying here is like really interesting in the sense that it's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Did you see effectively that there's a journey in thinking in a slightly new way when organizing things in databases? Because there is that learning curve.
Yeah.
Do you think it's mostly about rethinking how the information is structured and how you can make better use of it?
I think it's a really good question. I think it actually, it pushes you into thinking more logically, which can only be good, can't it? So, I mean, an example I've now realized I've built so many Excel, someone's got an Excel table, tracker, whatever it is, IRS, and they go, right, I'm going to build that in Morta and then sort of play it back to you. So, and you can import, you can flatten it out, import the CSV, but then when you start to think about how it should work in a database, you start to think about things a little bit differently. And actually, you want to, rather than a merge cell with multiple things that you do in Excel, you actually want a grouping. So yeah, it does start to make you think slightly, you can still approach it with a similar logic, but certain things you start to think subtly differently for the right reasons.
Yeah. And I guess one last one, one last small one from me. What are the, I know we've started talking about like looking, for example, at tendering departments and so on and so forth. What are the use cases that you're starting to look at beyond information management? And I guess how, just generally speaking, how are you finding one of the biggest questions that we get, understandably, is people have been using Excel for ages. How do you actually, how are you managing that change? And are you finding uptake effectively from the users in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, like anything, isn't it? Moving to a system from something else or a new way of doing it, it's small and gradual. I've certainly, as soon as I show a little bit of the art of the possible, and I'm still relatively new to it, but when you start to show someone and click around and the reaction's always positive, then often it's a different. So I'm going to create you an instance, have a play around, or here I've built part of it, I'll give you a bit of training, and then it's then getting them to actually spend time to invest in it. And that's the trick. But we've got one of our guys in tendering who basically, as soon as a tender comes in, he'll have an Excel trackers and scheduling out who needs to do what from the different disciplines, and that's often he'll manage it, but he'll send out Excels to everyone via email. They send stuff back, and we're like, come on, we can manage this better. Let's create it in here, invite people in, let's show them how to update things. So that's a work in progress. Although is so busy, I probably hasn't had any chance to revisit that. The next thing what I'm really keen to do, and I showed we've built kind of a standalone IRS, or effectively what the IRS was for a particular project, but I really want our design department to, I want the IRS to inform some of the resources we're building, whether it's a rolled up version of the IDP, that's where it starts, and they're dynamic and they're aligned. That would be a really nice one to solve. I've always wanted to, that's never been possible, but
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working on that one.
I know you've been doing a lot of research on that.
Well, I think one of the things that that I find really interesting is when you're starting to try to tie up some of these key resources between a high level responsibility matrix, a detailed responsibility matrix, the IDPs and the IRS and so on and so forth. In this world, it almost feels like you really need to get to grips with what is it that you're trying to achieve within that specific document, and it forces you to think through the relationships between them. So I'm looking forward to going on that journey of figuring out that relationship with you. But yeah, no, thanks a lot, Andy, for joining us today. I think we can start drawing the webinar today to a close, but honestly, it's been a fantastic session having you and having you share everything that you've learned so generously, which, to be honest, I think is something of itself. We need to be sharing lessons learned with each other, generally speaking. So it's really great to see you make that move first.
No, pleasure. I think it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks a lot, Andy, and thanks a lot for everyone who's joined us today. We'll send you all a follow-up with the recorded event, and we hope that you'll join us for more sessions. I can see several of the people here are also people who are using Morta, so we look forward to also having you in webinars in the future. We plan on making this a monthly event, and as I said, it's like the goal is for building a community and sharing lessons around how to move into databases. So thanks a lot for joining us today, and we'll let Andy enjoy his dinner.
Brilliant. I look forward to being on the other side and listening into some of the other good stuff that's going on by people in the audience. So yeah, brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye bye.